We are live.
We are live, and this is not an official episode of the podcast, but here we are.
It is a midweek catch-up. It's something that I've been doing on the YouTubes for the past few weeks, but we now have the capability of going live in multiple places simultaneously. So here we are, myself and the brainless one. And we try to keep this very succinct to one or two topics, and there, for me, is only one topic I really want to get into on this. Brainless one, you go for it, dude.
Gee, what could that topic be, Cousin Jay?
Oh, look at there. It's at the bottom of the screen.
I know you want to keep this short and sweet, so I know I told you earlier this week that I will keep my thoughts on how I really feel about everything until Friday's podcast, because I'm going to need an ample amount of time to actually dissect and just give you what I'm feeling about the whole situation, because I don't even have words.
Last week when I did this little midweek thing, I utilized the Mr. Perfect and Bobby Heenan Royal Rumble 92. We're not the type of guys that like to say we told you so, but we told you so. As much as it seems like in this instance, it definitely, Jack Perry had an awful lot to do with this. CM Punk could have been an adult and just ignored them. Ignored what Jack Perry said, ignored what he did, and just said, dude, whatever, you're not worth my time.
Right.
But, CM Punk is the best in the world at burning bridges and blowing them into Kingdom Come. Samoa Joe more or less sounded like he was pretty ticked off at Punk for what happened. Kind of saying, there are people in this business, you think are your friends, or you find out that they're your friends specifically because, you could help them out.
Right.
And he didn't specifically say Punk was that, but it certainly felt heavily implied that, Punk was that. And Jericho, I think it was either today or yesterday, was as diplomatic as he could be, saying, it's an unfortunate situation, and he was helpful for AEW. And, he talked about how he actually joked around with Punk before he went out for his match, because Jericho had a specific move that he's planning in his match and knew that Punk occasionally did that move. Now, one little thing I almost have to say here is I thought when I saw the Samoa Joe CM Punk match, I think the move that Jericho specifically talked about, Punk actually did in the match, even though Jericho was like, hey, are you going to do this? And he heard from Punk, no, I'm not going to do this. And I think it was like a Frankensteiner off the top rope or something along those lines.
That's what it was, yep.
And it was just, all right, was Jericho saying this? And if Punk did do that in the match, what was that, Punk being an a-hole, or is this Jericho trying to say, oh, this dude said one thing and did another? But then Jericho talked about, he joked with Punk that he was going to do the GTS in the match, and Punk took him seriously for a couple of seconds and then started laughing because he realized, oh, He's messing around with me. But I mean, those are some of the things that are out there now. What do you think about those things?
I think with just that being part of the equation, it's kind of hard to argue about whether or not Punk should have kept his job. I mean, because you had the same situation almost identically a year ago when he had his little scrum with the Elite at All Out. And now it's happening here at All In with Jungle Jack Perry. I don't think, I mean, the thing with Chris Jericho, who the hell knows anymore?
Right.
I've heard so many different things and so many different stories about so many different people now. I don't even know if my Rushmore should even be my Rushmore. Because you could take any one of those people out. However, the one thing that needs to get brought up in this is that Jack Perry is the one that is completely at fault for all of this unfolding. He should also be fired. I don't care about anything else. CM Punk got fired? Fine. I can understand it. It's justifiable. But Jack Perry started all this. He was the instigator. Right. And I'm telling you right now, if they did an actual investigation, which this is a bunch of bullshit that they did an investigation and it was figured out in a week, especially because Tony Khan was sitting right there when it all happened, apparently, because that's what they said. So he watched it all unfold, but they still needed to have an investigation. How the hell this was already investigated in less than a week when the one for All In went months and months and months and months and months. And there was no real resolution as to what happened because they all came back and whatever, and it was very vague and tried to be avoided and all this stuff. Jack Perry went out on national television. Whether CM Punk was brought to Atlanta to negotiate a peace treaty with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega that the Elite canceled last minute. Then he arrives at the airport to find out there's no transportation for him from the airport to the hotel, which is a pretty much a guarantee once, with anybody in AEW. He had, the number that they gave him for the transportation lead led to a phone number that didn't exist to anybody. It was just a non-working number. Had to get onto the train system, which is kind of like the T in Boston. So trying to get through there, he got lost. Luckily, there was fans that helped him get to his way. After all that has happened, and then he gets to the arena, and he's in Gorilla, and he's ready to have his first match, and Jungle Jerkoff said what he said. If you take everything that is out of everything that has happened with Punk, take the whole thing that happened with WWE all those years ago out of the equation, what happened with the Elite? Would you have blamed him for what he did to Jungle Boy if this all just kind of unfolded and last year didn't happen with the Elite?
What I would say specifically is, again, he's supposed to be the adult in the room. Maybe he sits there and tells Jungle Boy, like, dude, what the hell? Perry's main argument here is like, well, I was just trying to get myself heel heat. What I think, this is just this is guessing on my part. I'm going to come out and say this. I'm guessing on this. I'm guessing Punk got up in his face. Why the F did you do that? And he didn't have an answer other than I'm being an immature asshole. So he's like, oh, I'm just trying to get heel heat. It's like, who the fuck knew about, the thing about the glass?
Yeah.
Only people like us who may have, who dig too deeply into these things, probably. Right?
He was trying to pop. If he's trying to get any kind of heat, and he's not going to get it, but if he's trying to pop people, he's popping the same people who think it's great when dudes wrestle against fuck dolls and 9-year-old Chinese girls. That's what he's trying to get a reaction from, them and the Elite. And I'm telling you right now, the fact that he's as much of a freaking Elite jock sniffer as a lot of these other clowns in AEW, I wouldn't put it past him that they put him up to this. Jack, where do you and you want to talk about the adult in the room? If all this unfolded in front of Tony Khan, isn't he like the adult in any room? He is the boss.
He's supposed to be.
He's the guy.
Supposed
he's
to be.
L signer of the checks. Why isn't he handling this? Every single person who has gone out there and talked about this on the radio show who has worked in the past in the backs of professional wrestling have all said the same thing. I would have squashed that thing at the beginning because I would have grabbed him. I would have grabbed Punk. I would have put them in rooms and we would have talked this out. But Tony Khan's not going to do that. That has been the biggest problem with AEW is that Tony Khan does this. He wants to be everybody's best friend. He doesn't want to be the boss. He clearly doesn't want to be the boss.
Right.
He has hugged more people than he has fired. That's not a boss. I'm sorry. It's hard for me to kind of deviate from the fact that this looks more and more each and every week like Tony Khan is playing fantasy wrestling with his action figures, except that these aren't actually action figures. They're the actual wrestlers.
All right, a couple of things here. Perhaps that is what they could hire Sasha Banks for. It'll be boss time.
Hold on. That's another thing I actually wanted to mention. I was actually going to save that for Fridays, but since you mentioned it, they fired Tony. I mean, they didn't fire Tony Khan. They fired CM Punk this week. And then they talked about how they're going to bring in Sasha Banks. How is that?
Mercedes Moné.
Mercedes Moné. A woman who is, on numerous occasions, not just one, on numerous occasions, was upset about the booking of her in a wrestling organization to the point where she walked out because she was so upset. Twice. She had a hissy fit and a temper tantrum outside of WrestleMania 35. So you're going to bring her in? And that is the definition of, is it sanity? When
insanity.
You do this, insanity is when you do the same thing over and over again, expect a different result, but you get the same one every time. So you're bringing in somebody who, tell me when I'm lying. You brought in somebody who was fired from WWE because of decisions that WWE made they didn't like, and they've been butting heads and they've alienated themselves from the wrestling industry for 7 years until you brought him in. He comes in and in 2 years absolutely eviscerates the locker room in AEW to the point where you have to fire him. And your solution is, there's another woman that actually did the exact same thing as CM Punk, but nobody mentions it as much as they mention it about CM Punk.
Right.
And you're going to bring her in a women's division that Tony Khan has already clearly proven in 4 years he has no idea how to book a women's division. A woman who has also complained about her booking status. And you're going to bring her in and expect a different result. She, too, could probably kick Kenny Omega's ass in an actual fight.
Just want to say hello to F and Mark's Hall of Famer, Tommy. Thanks for tuning in.
What's up, Tommy?
Another thing I want to get into, and we could dig deeper on Friday. So if you're available on Friday, check out the podcast at 6:30 Eastern Time. But Tony Khan, in his statement, specifically said there was a committee. A committee. We have no idea who's on this committee. This is my guess. He has 3 EVPs that we know of.
And a guy who calls himself a cowboy with butterflies on his pants.
I'm guessing the EVPs were on the committee, and maybe even Jack Perry probably wasn't on the committee, but I'm guessing he used higher ups. I guess it's possible that he brought somebody like Tony Schiavone in or Jim Ross.
No.
To talk about this, but there's literally no transparency of who's in this committee and why have they decided that Jungle Boy gets an indefinite suspension, which could mean it could end this week. He could be gone forever. Quite honestly, I think a good solid firing would do good for him. I think maybe it would actually help him grow up. Yep. It helped Drew McIntyre. It's helped a whole bunch of people maybe I better straighten my shit out because guess what? My shit actually does stink. So, yeah, I don't know about this committee. What are your thoughts on Tony Khan talking about a committee?
Oh, it's definitely the EVPs and Mega. There's no way that it's anything other than that. And I bet you any money that wasn't Tony Khan's idea to fire CM Punk. It was probably Mega's idea. Mega, whatever her name is. She's the second highest rated position person in there. She was in the locker room when CM Punk had them jump into his locker room for the last year.
Hmm.
She probably doesn't. She's in the. Anybody associated with the Young Bucks is bad news for AEW, and that is, that's the issue. Is that if you're in there with the elite, you're going to get a pass, and you're going to get looked in a different light as everybody else. And because of the fact that CM Punk had issues with the elite last year, he's always going to have issues with the elite because they think that they're these God's given gifts of freaking professional wrestling, and that's not how it works.
All right. We got Jeff tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. He asks if Punk has issued any sort of statement yet. He has not. And I'm guessing there might be some sort of NDA that was part of, like, when he came back, there were certain things that they had to have in writing. And I think one of them was actually that he's going to show up at all events that he was supposed to be on. That was something that Tony Khan put in place. I don't think he has officially said anything anywhere. And Tommy's asking, is this Jack's first issue? And the answer to that is no.
No, because he had that issue when they were doing the whole planning and promoting of All In, and they said that they sent Jack Perry out there with Ruby Soho and Anna Jay. And they said Ruby Soho was wonderful and delightful, and every fan gave high praise to her because she acted like she was there before. And Jack Perry was kind of standoffish and was kind of a dick, and people were asking for autographs and pictures and stuff like that. And just the way that he presented himself was not in a glowing way for AEW as somebody who was representing the company. If this is one of the faces,
I was going to say, even the heels at WrestleMania will be pleasant to the fans for fan access. Even though, like kayfabe, they could, hey, I'm going to be an a-hole. Jack Perry at the time when they were doing that was a face and did not want to be bothered with taking photos with the fans when they're trying to sell out a ginormous stadium, something they've never attempted to before. Again, kind of showcasing his immaturity, and he ain't ready to have that responsibility on him.
And honestly, they did a Q&A with a panel with all the wrestlers, and all the wrestlers, they gave supreme high praise to Ruby Soho, and Jack Perry just answered some of the questions like, Jack, what would you give advice for somebody who's trying to get into the industry? And he's like, just don't do it. What the fuck, man? I would have fired the dude way before this would have happened. Punk would still be working. Well, I don't know about that. But
he would have found something else to cry about.
Yeah. And I saw the thing with the Collision with the low ratings. I also saw that after Tony Khan's announcement, they lost 89,000 viewers after Tony Khan announced that CM Punk got fired.
Quite honestly, I think Collision is going to be on the Rampage course. Now, part of the problem with when they put it on the TV lineup, I know you were psyched that we were getting another Saturday show.
Oh, I love Saturday wrestling. That's why
but the big problem is the next 4 months.
Right.
There's going to be college football on every Saturday.
Yep.
People really like wrestling, but because football in the United States is on a premium, and whenever football comes up, guess what? People I think are going to choose football over pro wrestling. And when you have a brand that's not established yet, so I think their ratings are going to continue to go down. And I think they would have gone down if Punk was there. I mean, we already saw that it was starting to go down when it went head to head against SummerSlam. That was the beginning of the big exodus of viewers.
Right.
So I think Collision's going to be around for a few years, but I don't know how they build that show up. I mean, part of it is now the soft brand split's over because you don't have, the people who had the major problems with each other. All right, they could now shift between all the shows and everybody gets along enough where you could have the big stars from Wednesday on Saturday night also.
I'm curious to see what happens going forward now that CM Punk's not on the show. Like, how much of an influence are the guys who wrestle blow-up dolls and 9-year-old Chinese girls going to have? The guys who wear the exploding sneakers and the guys who pretend that they're cowboys from some part of Virginia that is not even an actual part of the map of Virginia.
On a separate note, Mike Rainey, we've been doing, I've been doing on Wednesdays a short kind of, closer to 15-minute type thing, at least on one or two big topics every week. But now that we have the capability of going live on both, we have gone live on both. But I'm doing well.
I'm brainless.
So, I mean, that's going how it goes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm going to go a lot more into detail on Friday. I very long-winded. I can't wait. I'm actually excited for Friday. I've never been more excited for a Friday in my life for this podcast because I am going to tee off like I am Tiger Woods on a Sunday with a 7-stroke lead at the Masters. I'm gonna wear
Happy Gilmore,
or like Happy Gilmore, or like Ron Swanson after having sex. I'm gonna wear the red shirt and the black pants.
Okay.
I don't know about that red shirt.
Really quick thing. Before we check out for the evening, there was actually, after the brawl out incident last year, it sounds like Punk had talked to people and kind of got the word out that he was interested in coming back to WWE, possibly doing something at the Royal Rumble last year. Well, technically this year, but in 2023 wanted to do the Royal Rumble and kind of penciled in a performer for him to have a WrestleMania match. And that was going against none other than one of our favorites, Captain Cupcake.
Yeah, they were going to do a cupcake on a pole match.
Yeah, between Kevin Owens,
they were going to
Punk.
They were going to ditch the Cinnamon Toast Crunch as the brand, and they were going to bring in Hostess. And it was going to be a Hostess cupcakes on a pole match.
Yes.
And somehow Cassius Ohno was going to do a run-in into the match.
Yes.
At 575 pounds, Morrow.
I thought I double-checked what they actually say Samoa Joe's weight is in AEW, and they say he's 310. So I'm a little sad to say that Nigel actually got it right the night of All Out, because I was hoping like he came listed in the ring as like 280, and he said he's over 300 pounds, Excalibur. Yeah.
Well, Excalibur would have seen that if he wasn't wearing a mask.
Yeah. So, but what do you give any credence to that report out there that Punk was wanting to get back for the Royal Rumble and that Captain Cupcake was going to be his opponent, possibly?
And honestly, it really does depend on who was the person who was the first to announce it. If it has anything to do with Dave Meltzer or Brian Alvarez, I don't believe any of that crap. I don't believe Fightful anymore now that one of their former employees is now working for AEW. I don't believe anything that Fightful tells me. I don't even know what these dirt sheets are going to be. I don't even know who I trust anymore. I trust us. That's it. It's the only dirt sheets in the Solid Monster. Those are the only people I really trust are us and the Solid Monster. Because all these people...
Cornette seems to have like a pretty good track record.
He seems to... But I
don't think the goozling thing happened.
No, I mean it was a front. What do they say? A front.
Yeah, front face lock.
Yeah, it was a front face lock. It was a guillotine for the wrestling fans and not the UFC fans. I would have loved
Mike Rainey believes that he says that he believes there was some credibility to those reports about Punk and WWE. Yeah.
I mean, he was there. So it wouldn't surprise me. He was trying to talk to Triple H. He was trying to talk to a bunch of other people. It wouldn't surprise me.
Sure.
Who knows? I mean, it's... I don't know. Until the other shoe falls, or they show the video from backstage where Punk attacked Jack Perry. It's all hearsay. I want CM Punk to go on the James E. Cornette podcast. That would be the most listened to podcast in the history of professional wrestling. I'm sorry, the second most listened to episode, other than the 7.5 hour WrestleMania spectacle we did a few years back, where we did like 4,100 people.
Right. Yeah. Other than that, so Mike Rainey chiming in saying that right before we started here, it's been announced that General Adnan has passed away.
I unfortunately only remember him from that match at SummerSlam because that was the first pay-per-view I ever got live. It's my favorite SummerSlam too. I don't care what anybody says. It's fantastically done. You can't do this to me. And it's unfortunate that it happened. But honestly, that's all I really remember him for is being General Adnan, where he's teamed up with Sergeant Slaughter when he was an Iraqi sympathizer with the Iron Sheik going as Colonel Mustafa.
Right.
But it's a sad day for wrestling when we lose any of the wrestlers from our childhood. So it's, rest in peace to General Adnan.
And at this point, we only have two people from that match still alive.
Yep.
Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan. It's been reported that Hulk Hogan was also a member of the committee to fire CM Punk. Tony Khan contacted the Hulkster and, let him know in no uncertain terms, like what was right for business. that was after he told him that about the plan that Vince wanted him to end the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 3. But he said, Vince, you know what? I think we should hold off till like WrestleMania 30, because then it's going to be really important that the Undertaker's streak is beaten. You know what? Maybe I should go against Andre.
There you go. Even though the Undertaker doesn't appear in WWE until November of 1990.
Yes.
And WrestleMania 3 happened in 1987.
Well, I think this is part of the multiverse thing with Hulk Hogan, and perhaps he and Doc Brown got together, and maybe that's why the Hulkster believes he wrestled 400 days in a year. Went back to the future one too many times, scrambled his brain.
Wait, brother, I had the DeLorean, so I was able to wrestle 400 years in a career, brother.
I went back in time all the way to when Adam and Eve were out there, and I saw Bobby Fish, and I knew I had to get out of there.
I saw Bobby Fish fight Abraham Lincoln, brother.
Yeah. Mike Rainey, Brainless One, and I agree with you. Jungle Boy should be fired.
Again,
Will he be fired? Probably not.
I think you're right. I think he's going to be back in about a week.
Yeah.
And they're going to do some kind of stupid thing where they bring him back that's very similar to what they did with Dominic when he came out at WrestleMania, after he did his hard time for a day and a half. Just like my dog.
Yeah.
My dog was in the kennel for 36 hours at most.
The kennel from hell.
Yes.
Anyway, for Wednesday, I think that's about it. But we will do a full bloodletting of this incident come Friday, and we will talk about all the other things that have gone on in professional wrestling. Friday evening, 6:30 Eastern time. We look forward to seeing you all there, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't wait because the Brainless One on Friday evening will be giving his official statement on everything that is going on in regards to all elite wrestling. So tune in for that because it's going to be a doozy. It's going to make my Nia Jax meltdown look like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So for not an episode of the F and Marks podcast, I'm Jay.
And I'm over somewhere over here. And I am the Brainless One. Make sure you back out.
With your guac out. See you on Friday, everybody. Have a good one.
We'll talk about that on Friday, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.